All right. Hello. I have my friend Angie Mullins here today, and if you have been watching the news lately, you might have seen that we have a large problem, not only in Mississippi but across the country, with drug poisonings, we should say. They call overdoses, but fentanyl specifically, which is 50 times more potent than heroin. And if you've ever wanted to know someone who's had or lost a child from this, today is that day to hear from Miss Angie Mullins. This is her son's birthday, as a matter of fact, so it was very much a God thing that we were talking, and that she is willing to share this story so that it might help other parents. First, I just want to read my scripture of why I do this podcast videos, and that is Psalm 105 verses 1 through 5. And that's really to remember what God has done, and that's give thanks to the Lord, call on his name, make known his accomplishments among the nations, sing to him, make music to him, tell about his miraculous deeds, boast about his holy name. Let the hearts of those who seek the Lord rejoice. Seek the Lord and the strength he gives. Seek his presence continually. Remember the miraculous deeds he's performed, his mighty acts, and the judgments he decreed. So, first, Miss Angie, she has four children. One's in heaven.
That's right. One is in heaven.
Yeah, and they all grew up here in Madison, Mississippi.
They did. They all graduated from Madison Central.
Yes.
I have a daughter who was born first, and after that came all of the boys.
All three boys.
Yes, and the babies now are 20 and 22 years old. Yeah.
That's great.
So time flies.
And it just so happens they're all getting together this weekend.
That's right. They're all coming home for John's birthday, because today
great.
would have been his 25th birthday.
So you say his second heavenly birthday.
His second heavenly birthday, that's right.
And Angie grew up in Brandon, and you had your own difficult personal loss as a child, as a 16-year-old yourself.
That's right. My father passed away when I was 16, and then just a little after that, my sister passed away, my mother passed away. So I've lost a baby. So I've had all kinds of trauma and loss, and just traumatic things happen to me along life's way.
And how old were you when you made a profession of faith in Christ?
It was after my father died.
Really?
I had made a profession of faith when I was like 5, and I wanted to be a member of the church, because that's what they called it, was being a member of the church. And so at 5 years old, I went to be a member of the church. And then after my dad died and I started having some really tough struggles and tough questions, I realized that I didn't really know the Lord like I needed to as my Lord and Savior. And so it was after he died. So I was a teenager when that happened, 16, 17 years old. And, I really believe that all of those losses have prepared me for this loss of my child, which, I know you can't really rank losses, but losing a child is definitely
it's the worst.
Just not in the natural order of how things are supposed to happen.
And talk about John's death. He was 24.
John was actually 23.
23.
Yeah.
Okay.
So he died in February of 2021. He died accidentally of taking something that he thought was something else, but it was laced with fentanyl. And he had actually split the pill with a friend of his, and John's half of the pill was tainted and the friend's half was not tainted. And so it killed him almost immediately. We found him the next morning, and it has been surreal ever since. There are days when I still think he's just on vacation somewhere and will be home. You know, we'll be home later. I know I did that a lot when my dad passed away. I would just kind of pretend that he was on a business trip or something. I find myself doing that a lot with John. But one thing that happened to me when John did pass away is it took away every fear I have of passing away. I mean, I am ready. When the Lord calls me home, I will be so ready. And not in a morbid way, not that kind of way, but in a joyous, man, I just can't wait kind of.
Your faith is stronger.
Yes.
You know what you hope for.
That's right. That's what I know is going to happen. But about my faith, I mean, there are days, I think I've told you before, where, I mean, I don't feel like saying those things sometimes, and I don't exude a joyous attitude all the time. But I know that I've always heard my whole life that you have to work your faith. And that's what it is working it. I mean, you can't just say you have faith without putting some sort of action behind it. And if I believe that Jesus has saved us, and you know, that I will be with my son again, if I believe that, I have to act like that. I can't not act like that.
And you speak it too.
I try to. I really do. I really try to live that faith, because it's important. I mean, it's important that I see my baby again. It's important that I see Jesus. And I know he's there, because one thing,
was he struggling? Like, how did he get to the point of this?
He had been struggling, and I think it started as all of my kids were saved. They were all had been baptized and made professions of faith. And so of that I'm sure. And but John had struggled. He struggled with self-confidence and anxiety, just maybe not even fitting in. He was a good-looking kid, a funny kid, quick-witted. I mean, he was just a wonderful, wonderful son. But in his young mind, he struggled, and I think he turned to alcohol, and then eventually he turned to some drugs that led to this fentanyl craze that was going around, and he really got mixed up with some wrong folks.
And so much we were talking about, it's so easy to access now for our adolescents and college age. I was reading that, you know, you can Snapchat a drug dealer and they'll deliver to your house.
To your door.
Because I was like, where do you go to get it? No, they bring it to you.
Yes, they will bring it to you. They do. And then you can even pay electronically. You know, you don't even have to exchange money. Or anything like that. I mean, it's just all electronic these days. John knew exactly which friends to ask. Now I think in John's case, I think he was just trying to have a good time, which is the scary part. I really thought John had turned a corner. His dad and I both thought that he had turned a corner, because he started working full time and was really starting to turn around. But he was excited for this particular weekend, the weekend that he passed away, and I think he was just trying to relax and have a good weekend. And it led back to some old friends and old patterns. And
so had he gone through rehab? He
had been through it was for Xanax, use of Xanax, and
which is for anxiety, which has, you know, been prescribed to a lot of people dealing with anxiety, right?
Well, and at first he was doing alcohol, like I said, and of course alcohol's a dead giveaway. You can tell when they've been drinking because they smell, right? But when he started taking the pills, I knew he was acting funny, but
are there any signs? Can you tell as a mom?
As a mom,
you can tell.
As a mom, you can tell that something's wrong when they spill their drink all over the kitchen and just it's start having accidents and stuff like that. And I wanted to not believe that. I wanted to believe that it wasn't a problem. I believe I knew that he was doing it, but I didn't let myself believe it was a real problem. So
what advice would you have to parents that are in the early stages or even in the rehab stages? What advice would you give them?
I think the biggest thing I could say is to not give up on your young person, not to let up on your young person, not to not just to stay on them for no reason, but to keep an eye out, a watchful, caring, parenting eye, and if they want to talk to you, I mean, anybody who has teenagers knows that they don't talk when you want to talk. It may be late at night or something, but when they want to talk, you need to make time and talk to them, and about what they want to talk about. Not necessarily what your agenda might be.
That's important.
So yeah, you just know that they are talking to you because there's a reason why they're talking to you, and they feel like you can offer something other than a lecture or a scolding or something like that. They're really.
Did John ever? Did he appeal to you? I mean, could you tell, were there times where he really was asking a cry for help?
Yeah, there were times. Times that were verbatim. I mean, just exactly an ask for please help me, please don't give up on me, and those kinds of things that definitely get your ear. I mean, you don't ignore things like that when your children say them to you. But just like my mother didn't know what to do for me when my father passed away and I was so full of angst and worry, she told me one day, she said, I'll do anything for you. I just don't know what it is. And so I've always thought that I wouldn't do that for my kid. I would always know what to do for them. I'll know. But you don't always know what to do for them.
You said there's no book.
There's no handbook.
The manual. Where's the parent manual?
That's right. I did. They forgot to give that to us. But anyway, yeah, he asked for help and was like I said, was trying to turn a corner and trying to do good. It's just an incredible force of evil against our children. Because they go through things and are faced with things that we don't even imagine.
So much more like the normal anxiety and uncomfortable not fitting in and adolescents, they are getting all this external social pressure.
Well, they never
from everywhere.
Right. They never get to be off guard. They never get to go home and close the door and be done with it. Because we could go home from school and just go to our room and be finished, but they're not. They're always expected to post or chat or whatever.
Right.
On those platforms.
I was just remembering that we were talking about how much more it's become a problem. The statistics in Mississippi in 2019, I guess pre-pandemic, we had 139 fentanyl-related deaths in Mississippi alone, and in 2020 was 313, so more than double. And thinking about John, the lethal dose of fentanyl is 2 milligrams, which is 15 to 20 granules of salt. so he gets this little pill that he thinks is something else, and his half has those
tiny
15 to 20 granules of salt.
Right, right. Because it's not a regulated industry, if you will. I mean, the precursor drugs come from China into Mexico and the cartels. Literally, these are things that you hear about on TV or television shows, but that's really what happens. It goes through these Mexican cartels and they mix the drugs up. I picture, somebody literally stirring it like that, because that's the kind of care that's taken when they press these drugs. Just absolutely not regulated at all.
And you said you've learned that they look pressed just like a normal medicine tablet.
Right. They look just like, they can make them look like Xanax, Percocets, anything.
Right. So, one thing that has been strong that you've always said is your faith, and I can't imagine in the darkness of those days, knowing that he's gone, how can you keep going one foot in front of the other? What is it about your faith that's carried you through, and how do you keep going every day?
Well, I do have a favorite Bible verse.
Yes.
It's in Lamentations 3:23, and it's that whole chapter is the basis for Great is Thy Faithfulness, which is my favorite hymn. But that particular verse just says, they are new every morning. Great is Thy faithfulness. And they is God being generous with us, and to me, to find a verse like that in the middle of a book called Lamentations, I mean, somebody just crying out to God, and in the throes of lamenting, they have that wonderful verse that has turned into such a classic hymn. I mean, it's been kind of a mantra for my whole life, really. I mean, because every day there's a new wellspring of goodness that God intends for me.
Absolutely. That's beautiful.
Thank you.
That's beautiful. One thing I just wanted to mention was in honor of John, that y'all have done a scholarship at the
School of the Ozarks.
School of the Ozarks.
Yeah.
And today, on John's birthday, you received cards from two of the students.
Yes.
Thanking you, right?
Yeah, who were awarded scholarships in his name.
In his name.
Yeah.
So his legacy is continued on. The hard work.
It is.
The hard work, like that college
you.
is. That's great. Hard work you.
That's right.
So thank you so much for sharing
Thank
today.
you for having me
I
so
appreciate
much.
it.
You're great. Thank you.